When Police Chief Robert Harrison became Detroit's most respected law enforcement leader, citizens trusted him to fight corruption and protect their neighborhoods. But when his heroin addiction and evidence tampering schemes consumed him, he began framing innocent people for murder and killing detectives who discovered his crimes, turning police headquarters into a deadly criminal organization. Before starting the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now, let's get back to the video. The Michigan winter wind swept through Detroit's downtown district as Police Chief Robert Harrison organized fabricated evidence files and witness intimidation materials for what would become the most dangerous law enforcement operation of his 19-year career as the Midwest's most influential police chief and criminal justice administrator. At 53 years old, Robert had established himself as Detroit's premier law enforcement commander, controlling police investigations and evidence processing that attracted organized crime families, corrupt prosecutors, and criminal defense attorneys who valued his access to police resources and his reputation for manipulating criminal cases, affecting conviction rates and judicial proceedings throughout the metropolitan area. Robert's police chief office occupied the most secure wing of Detroit Police Headquarters, featuring evidence storage facilities, interrogation coordination rooms, and case management centers that allowed him to oversee the department's most sensitive investigations, while maintaining absolute control over criminal evidence worth millions in prosecutorial cooperation programs affecting law enforcement activities and judicial outcomes throughout the city. The interior of Robert's office reflected his mastery of law enforcement administration and his understanding of criminal justice expectations for both investigative excellence and absolute authority during the most critical police decisions affecting Detroit's crime-fighting efforts, featuring walls displaying law enforcement awards from multiple mayors, photographs of high-profile arrests, and testimonials from grateful community leaders whose neighborhoods had been protected through his policing expertise and strategic crime prevention programs. But beneath Robert's reputation for law enforcement excellence lay a dangerous combination of heroin addiction, systematic evidence fabrication, and calculated murder that had transformed his police operations into criminal enterprises, where threatening detectives and suspicious investigators met their fate through planted evidence and witness elimination during vulnerable criminal investigations. "Good morning, Chief Harrison," said Detective Lisa Martinez, arriving for her weekly case briefing about ongoing investigations and federal cooperation requests that required Robert's authorization for evidence processing and prosecutorial coordination affecting major criminal cases. Lisa had recently discovered irregular evidence handling procedures and had begun questioning Robert's explanations about investigative protocols that seemed to violate constitutional requirements and federal oversight standards. "Good morning, Detective Martinez," Robert replied with the law enforcement authority and police expertise that had made him legendary among Detroit officers who viewed him as both crime fighter and departmental leader, capable of maintaining public safety through sophisticated investigation techniques and strategic prosecutorial cooperation affecting criminal justice outcomes throughout the metropolitan area. Lisa had become Robert's most dangerous subordinate, not because of her demanding investigative requirements or her federal coordination responsibilities, but because of her recent discovery of fabricated evidence and her growing awareness of the corruption operation that Robert had been conducting while supposedly providing legitimate law enforcement leadership for Detroit police operations and criminal justice programs. What Lisa didn't know was that Robert had been systematically framing innocent suspects and murdering police personnel for over 3 years, using his chief authority and access to evidence storage facilities to coordinate criminal convictions against innocent people while eliminating anyone who discovered his evidence manipulation or threatened to expose his criminal exploitation of police resources for personal advancement and conviction rate manipulation. Robert's transformation from respected chief to calculating killer had begun 5 years earlier, when his heroin addiction had escalated from prescription pain management following a line-of-duty injury to daily dependency that consumed his substantial police salary and forced him into relationships with organized crime figures who offered enormous payments for police cooperation in eliminating criminal competitors through false arrests and fabricated murder convictions, targeting innocent individuals who threatened organized crime operations. His addiction cost over $2,500 per day, while his access to Detroit police evidence storage facilities and investigation coordination programs provided unprecedented opportunities for framing innocent suspects through fabricated evidence and coerced testimony that generated millions in organized crime payments for eliminating criminal competition through state-sanctioned imprisonment of innocent people. His criminal activities escalated when several detectives and internal affairs personnel discovered evidence of investigative misconduct and threatened to report their suspicions to federal oversight agencies and law enforcement organizations investigating police corruption, targeting Detroit's criminal justice system and evidence processing procedures. Robert murdered his first victim, a suspicious internal affairs investigator who detected fabricated crime scene evidence, by orchestrating a gang shooting using organized crime assets that appeared to be criminal targeting rather than premeditated assassination designed to protect evidence fabrication operations. The success of his first murder convinced Robert that eliminating threatening police personnel and suspicious oversight investigators was both necessary for protecting his corruption operation and achievable given his police authority and his ability to coordinate with organized crime networks who could stage criminal attacks and eliminate witnesses while providing plausible cover stories involving gang violence and criminal retaliation. Over the following 3 years, Robert murdered 9 additional individuals using various organized crime methods and police coordination that took advantage of his chief authority, his access to criminal networks during vulnerable investigations, and his ability to stage deaths as criminal violence or police targeting that occurred during routine law enforcement activities with personnel who had access to sensitive information that could expose evidence fabrication operations. His victims had been carefully selected based on their discovery of his criminal activities, their potential cooperation with federal authorities, or their knowledge of evidence manipulation techniques that could expose his organized crime coordination and systematic prosecution of innocent suspects for false criminal convictions. His victims included Detective Patricia Williams, a forensic evidence specialist who had discovered evidence of systematic case manipulation and whose crime lab consultation had resulted in fatal drive-by shooting staged by organized crime assets during routine evidence processing. Sergeant David Foster, who had reported suspicious investigation tactics and whose police station meeting had ended in fatal robbery using weapons obtained through criminal networks, and Agent Jennifer Martinez, a federal police oversight investigator who had been tracking evidence tampering and whose police headquarters consultation had resulted in fatal exposure to concentrated heroin disguised as evidence contamination affecting federal oversight of police investigation systems. The evidence fabrication operation had become extraordinarily sophisticated, with Robert coordinating the systematic framing of innocent suspects through carefully planted physical evidence and coerced witness testimony that provided false criminal convictions for organized crime competitors and innocent individuals who threatened criminal operations throughout Detroit's metropolitan area. Major criminal cases involving murder and drug trafficking served as primary evidence fabrication operations, with Robert personally coordinating the planting of false evidence and manipulation of witness testimony to secure convictions against innocent suspects who had been targeted by organized crime figures seeking to eliminate competition or personal enemies through false criminal prosecutions. The most disturbing aspect of the operation was the systematic targeting of innocent individuals for false murder convictions, with Robert coordinating with corrupt prosecutors and organized crime figures to identify suspects who could be framed for crimes they did not commit while protecting actual criminals who paid for police protection and prosecutorial immunity. Multiple innocent individuals had been convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment as a direct result of Robert's evidence fabrication, with false physical evidence and coerced witness testimony being used to secure murder convictions against suspects who had no connection to the crimes for which they were prosecuted and imprisoned. Chief Harrison, I need to discuss serious concerns about evidence tampering and reports of investigation corruption connected to your police department operations, said FBI Special Agent Maria Rodriguez of the Bureau's Civil Rights Division, arriving at Robert's headquarters carrying federal warrants to inspect his evidence procedures and interview him about suspicious criminal investigations. Special Agent Rodriguez specialized in investigating police corruption and had developed expertise in recognizing patterns of evidence manipulation and false conviction operations affecting law enforcement agencies throughout metropolitan areas. Special Agent Rodriguez's investigation represented an existential threat to Robert's criminal operation, as her federal civil rights expertise and access to police corruption databases could expose the systematic evidence fabrication operations and connect him to multiple suspicious deaths during police investigations and headquarters meetings affecting federal oversight and law enforcement cooperation. Special Agent Rodriguez: I think there may be some misunderstanding about complex criminal investigations and the unfortunate reality that police personnel sometimes become targets of gang violence despite advanced security protocols and federal cooperation measures, Roberts said, while discreetly activating a concealed alarm system that would summon corrupt officers who were part of his organized crime network for emergency elimination of federal law enforcement threats. Perhaps we could discuss these concerns in our evidence processing facility, where I can demonstrate the investigation procedures that might explain these tragic officer casualties. Police work involves dangerous criminal elements that might appear suspicious to those unfamiliar with urban crime fighting and organized criminal targeting affecting law enforcement operations. Special Agent Rodriguez agreed to examine Robert's evidence procedures, not realizing that the chief was leading her to a secure facility where previous murders had been committed and where Robert planned to coordinate her elimination using organized crime assets, while staging the scene as federal agent targeting that occurred during police corruption investigation, providing cover for her elimination while appearing to be criminal retaliation rather than deliberate murder by a chief protecting his evidence fabrication operations. But Robert's carefully planned murder of the federal agent was about to be prevented by the unexpected arrival of state law enforcement oversight officers who had been investigating police corruption patterns and had identified connections to his systematic evidence manipulation activities affecting Detroit police operations and criminal justice programs. State Police Inspector Michael Torres had been conducting comprehensive investigation into police evidence tampering and organized crime infiltration that exploited police chief authority to facilitate false convictions and eliminate potential witnesses to corruption operations affecting state oversight and federal law enforcement cooperation. Inspector Torres specialized in investigating police crimes and had developed expertise in tracking police departments that compromised criminal justice integrity while conducting systematic elimination of threats to evidence fabrication operations affecting law enforcement and judicial proceedings. The state investigation had been initiated by reports from multiple law enforcement oversight agencies and civil rights organizations who noticed patterns of suspicious evidence handling and police personnel deaths, suggesting organized crime networks were infiltrating police departments to facilitate false convictions while eliminating witnesses through sophisticated methods disguised as criminal violence. Police Chief Robert Harrison: "I am Inspector Torres with State Police Oversight," he announced as he entered the evidence facility where Robert was coordinating Special Agent Rodriguez's elimination. "I have state warrants for your investigation on charges of systematic evidence tampering, police corruption, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and multiple counts of first-degree murder related to your exploitation of police authority for criminal evidence manipulation affecting law enforcement integrity and federal cooperation." Robert's reaction to the state oversight intervention was desperate attempts to maintain his law enforcement credibility, as he realized that federal agents and state investigators had been investigating his corruption activities and connected them to systematic police personnel murders and organized crime coordination affecting Detroit Police Administration. Special Agent Rodriguez looked stunned as she realized how close she had come to being murdered by the chief she was investigating for evidence tampering. Her civil rights investigation had not only exposed Robert's corruption and murder operation, but also prevented her own death at hands of a killer using police authority as cover for systematic elimination of federal agents and corruption investigation threats. The comprehensive investigation that followed Roberts' arrest revealed the full scope of his criminal enterprise and sophisticated methods he had developed to exploit police authority for systematic evidence fabrication and murder. Forensic analysis of Roberts' police operations revealed extensive evidence of his corruption activities, including sophisticated evidence fabrication laboratories for creating false physical evidence, detailed records of organized crime payments worth millions, and comprehensive files containing case information that had been manipulated to secure false convictions against innocent suspects for fabricated criminal charges. The investigation uncovered Roberts' connections to organized crime families who had been coordinating evidence fabrication and police corruption operations while using his chief access to eliminate criminal competitors through false prosecutions and eliminate witnesses through sophisticated methods disguised as criminal violence and gang targeting affecting police personnel and federal investigators. Most disturbing was discovery of Roberts' detailed knowledge of criminal evidence systems and conviction manipulation methods, which he had used to develop increasingly sophisticated approaches for framing innocent suspects while eliminating police personnel who discovered his corruption operations or threatened to expose his organized crime coordination activities affecting criminal justice, integrity, and federal oversight cooperation. Police Chief Robert Harrison was ultimately convicted of 10 counts of first-degree murder, systematic evidence tampering, police corruption, conspiracy to obstruct justice, conspiracy with organized crime, and numerous other charges related to his exploitation of police authority for criminal evidence manipulation, affecting law enforcement integrity and federal cooperation. The conviction sent unprecedented shockwaves throughout Detroit law enforcement community, prompting immediate reforms in police oversight, evidence handling monitoring, and chief addiction prevention measures designed to protect criminal justice system from exploitation by corrupted police officials involved in organized criminal activities. Several other police chiefs and law enforcement officials were investigated for similar criminal activities, resulting in enhanced oversight of police operations and new requirements for evidence verification, investigation monitoring, and federal cooperation measures, making it difficult for organized crime networks to exploit police authority for systematic evidence fabrication operations. Special Agent Rodriguez and Inspector Torres received recognition for their collaborative investigation and became specialists in police corruption investigation, developing new techniques for identifying evidence tampering operations and protecting criminal justice system from exploitation by corrupted law enforcement officials. Detective Lisa Martinez and other surviving police personnel required extensive case review and psychological counseling to overcome trauma of learning that their trusted chief had been systematically fabricating evidence and murdering police officers while exploiting his authority for organized criminal activities. The case prompted comprehensive changes in police regulation, including mandatory state oversight and addiction screening for chiefs with evidence authority, enhanced monitoring of investigation procedures and evidence handling, real-time federal supervision of criminal prosecutions, and new reporting procedures for suspicious police activities involving constitutional violations. Roberts' conviction led to increased cooperation between police oversight agencies and federal organizations investigating organized crime, with new protocols designed to identify police systems that might be exploited for systematic criminal activities while eliminating witnesses to police corruption and constitutional violations. 5 years after Roberts' conviction and life imprisonment, Detroit law enforcement community continued implementing safeguards designed to protect criminal justice system from police chiefs who might abuse their positions for criminal purposes, affecting constitutional protections and federal oversight operations. The chief who had promised to protect constitutional rights and maintain law enforcement integrity had instead used his police authority to commit systematic evidence fabrication and murder while exploiting criminal justice system for organized crime coordination, threatening foundations of constitutional protection and federal law enforcement oversight. Police Chief Robert Harrison's final patrol had been permanently concluded by comprehensive investigation of state and federal justice, where he would serve multiple life sentences without possibility of parole. proving that even law enforcement officials who attempted to exploit their police authority for criminal gain could be identified, investigated, and brought to justice when dedicated federal agencies worked together to protect constitutional rights from predatory police corruption. The chief's final patrol had ended with his permanent removal from law enforcement service, serving as lasting reminder that those entrusted with constitutional protection must never abuse that sacred responsibility, and the police officials who would exploit law enforcement trust and investigative authority for criminal gain will ultimately face full consequences of their betrayal of police integrity and constitutional service. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.